Good evening, everyone. I hope that you can hear me. Uh, Welcome to the webinar organized by Career Planning and Development Center of OSA and also Faculty of Social Science, Data Science, and Policy Study Program. Welcome. And I would like to say thank you for coming to this webinar. The webinar title is Enter the Data World, Career Integrating Data Science and Policy Knowledge. And I would like to say that thank you for coming. And also, I would like to introduce three of our speakers. They are okay. They are Miss Annalene, and they are and also one of them is Dr. Bertley, and also the third one is Mr. Jeffrey Chen. Okay, one by one, I will introduce a little bit of our speakers, and the first speaker I would like to introduce is Ms. Annalene. She is JP and also the fellow of Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. Anna is the chief executive of GS1 Hong Kong. Anna holds a number of civic appointments in various Hong Kong SAR government committees, including Logistic Development Council, Hong Kong Taiwan Business Cooperation Committee, and Trade Industry Advisory Boards, as well as the Digital 21 Strategy Task Force on Industry Facilitations. Ms. Lin also sits on various industry and professional committees relating on logistics service and also the supply chain, etc. Advisory Board. She is also the vice chairman of Hong Kong Public Key Infrastructure Forum. Ms. Lin holds an MBA degree in strategic management from the Birmingham University of UK, and also she is a member of Birmingham University Business School Advisory Board. Thank you. And the second speaker, okay, I would like to introduce Dr. Bertel Lee. Bertel is the program manager with Civic Change. He has extensive experience in the field of analytical and applied environmental science in Hong Kong with a focus on air quality and also related policy. His prior engagement cover both the execution and also admin of research projects and specializing in data analysis, statistics, and also modeling. Berto holds a PhD in environmental science, policy, and management from the Hong Kong University, and also an MPhil in atmospheric environmental science. The first speaker I would like to introduce is Mr. Jeffrey Chen. Jeffrey is a senior data scientist at BCG Garmer, a Boston Consulting Group. Jeffrey, with years of experience in data analytics, helping business clients to understand the value of their data and also how to transfer into the actionable insight and also deliver measurable values. Jeffrey has extensive experience in the field of strategic data-driven consulting works and also development of AI interface. Jeffrey holds a master's degree of applied finance and also a bachelor degree of commerce in from all the degree from the, Australia. Okay, so I would like to say thank you again, okay, to three of our speakers, and I would like to introduce a little bit general rules of these webinars. We welcome the participant to ask questions. Okay, please send the questions to the host. And for any urgent questions, you may just ask after each speaker's presentation. However, we really highly recommend that you can ask questions after all speakers finish their presentations. Okay, so I would like to pass the time to Anna. Okay, the first speaker. So I may just stop sharing my screen first, and you can share your screen to the audiences to have your presentation. Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chen. Let me see. This one? Yes. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, I can see the screen. Thank you,
Okay.
Anna.
First of all, thanks, Dr. Chen, for your kind introduction, as well as the invitation to this interesting webinar talking about, the data science. First of all, I'd like to declare that I'm certainly not an expert in data science. However, the reason why I do want to participate and share this section is because I'm going to talk about a very basic application, the barcode, which I am sure every one of you must have come across. So how is that very conventional, traditional application actually forms an important foundation of data analytics, especially in terms of the product information. And that's really the objective. And today's barcode is much beyond what we can envisage it is. And I hope that the audience will find it interesting. Okay. Here is a little introduction or the agenda. I'll talk about what is GS1, the organization, the global organization I'm working with, and what is the barcode that you think of, but much beyond it, as well as the Internet of Things, how Internet of Things are related to enable this go digital and go smart. So who is GS1? GS1 is actually a global standards organization. We are headquartered in Brussels with over 110 national chapters. So Hong Kong is one of the chapter, Macau is another one, China is another one, etc., etc. In fact, out of the 65 Belt and Road countries, there are GS1 national chapters in each of them. On the other hand, you'll see that apart from as a not-for-profit organization, we're very much global and local and user-driven. And we have a lot of GS1 is actually, we have been founded nearly 50 years ago. The original starting point was in the US, but eventually the headquarters moved to Brussels. And because we need to serve multi-industry across different supply chains, so you can see that on the global level, we do have a lot of collaboration, especially with government or industry champions. For example, and later on I will cover a little bit, for example, with the US FDA, Food and Drugs Administration, because we're doing the identification for the medical device. Similarly, with the EU, and recently we have a lot of collaboration with World Health Organization, and very recent initiative is regarding the vaccine traceability. And of course, we are a keen supporter of ISO. Most of our standards have been ISO accredited. And we also work with W3C very strongly in terms of the smart search on the digital commerce, et cetera, as well as a lot of the business organization. I mean, the global one like APAC. Okay. So what are the GS1 standards? Well, we often call it the global data standards because it's what kind of standard we're talking about. Sorry, any? I heard something. No. Okay. So in nutshell, this is looks as if a very technical slide to explain. But basically, what we are talking about is 3 layers. The first layer, the standard, is to have identification or numbering structure to uniquely identify each object in the supply chain, whether it's a product, a location, an asset, or even a document, as an example. And then how this numbering structure and its attributes could be embedded in a data carrier. We call it data carrier. This is an ISO term. The data carrier can change, but the content embedded in the data carrier normally remains the same. So the data carrier can consist of normal barcode, the 1D barcode, or the 2D barcode, or RFID tag, depending on the application. And the use of the data carrier is to ensure that you don't need to type, is to preserve the efficiency and accuracy. At the same time, the standard much go beyond the numbering and the attributes and etc. It also covers the sharing of the data. So there are 3 primary types of sharing of data. First is the master data. The master data relating all the attributes of a product or a location. The transactional data refers to electronic data interchange. For example, the data defined for a PO, for an invoice, a shipment advice, etc., etc. And there is an international organization under the United Nations called the UN CFAT that helps to we work very closely with United Nations CFAT, the standard of the transaction data. And last but not the least is what we call the visibility event data. This is the latest one, which is developed based on the Internet protocol. So much so because if we're going to elaborate too much, probably you will all fall asleep. So what's the use of all these standards? If we have unique identification and as well as track and trace standard all merged together, we'll be able to facilitate end-to-end traceability and thereby help the consumer safety, customs efficiency, facilitate trade, etc., etc. In the following section, I will be using different examples to illustrate how this works. But this is just to give you a feel of what the GS1 standard is about and how it helps add value to the global supply chain. Back to GS1 Hong Kong. Globally, we have close to 50 years history. But back in Hong Kong, we just celebrated our 30th anniversary. We were founded by the Hong Kong General Chamber of Commerce back in 1989. And then in Hong Kong, Hong Kong is still a small chapter, but we basically rank number 15 or 16 in the global world. We have about 8,000 corporate members. All the GS1 chapters have corporate members. And then our first, of course, the most prevailing application would be tobacco, and then followed by the EDI. Later on, again, I will explain. So looking at our membership profile, although you can see from the slide the logo of many of the big companies, but in fact, I would say more than 85% of our membership are SMEs. That is under 10 employees in Hong Kong. And food and beverages account for more than 1/3 of our membership base, followed by cosmetics, a lot of the consumer product. Basically, majority of our members coming from the consumer goods industry from various sectors. And many of them not only for local, but also for export. So let's start the first chapter talking about tobacco and I would like to know, if any one of you haven't seen a barcode, I'm sure every one of you must have come across this black and white stripe. But in fact, this is much more than a barcode you see. But let me give you some, basic introduction of how a barcode looks like. This is a unique number given to a product, and you can see the numbering structure. It is like a telephone number. So 489 is a GS1 Hong Kong prefix, followed by the company prefix that we assign to each of the member. And then each member would assign a product item number to each of the product and followed by a check digit. Now, of course, we cannot pass the number. We have to use the entire number as a whole. So this is more called a GT, Global Trade Item Number, a unique ID which enables a global identification as well as enable traceability. But on the other hand, although we see the barcode on the physical product, but in fact, it is the digital data because it can be used to link all the different databases as well as in today's internet and social commerce. If I'm too fast, please let me know. So why is this about bridging the physical and the digital world? I'm sure you are familiar with the digital bricks and mortars in the retail, because as a consumer, when you check out, you will see the cashier busily scanning the barcode. This is what we call the application at the retail point of sale. But today, it is much more than the bricks and mortars. It's also a very popular or prevailing application on the e-marketplaces. For example, Amazon, Alibaba, JD.com, etc., etc. Most of the world's global e-marketplaces would also ask their suppliers to provide the GT, that is the barcode number, to enable listing. Why is it so? Just give you some example of if you are a supplier to Amazon, they will ask you, before you can list the product on the Amazon website, they will ask you to get an identifier from GS1. Now, these are the different terms, but in fact, they refer the same. The GT, the UPC, I don't go into the details of it, even the book number, ISBN, etc. So you need to get the number before you can list the product. Why is it so? Because Amazon would like to, this is a marketplace, but they would like to match identical products. They would like to have the unique ID for identical products on Amazon, because Amazon have listing from all over the world. Even though, for example, in Hong Kong, we don't have an Amazon office, our number one driver now in Hong Kong actually is Amazon. And a lot of the suppliers list the product just because of Amazon. On the other hand, they want to eliminate duplicate listing. The reason being that they want to provide a better consumer search experience based on the GT. Similarly, if you go to Alibaba, this is Alibaba. As you can read from the slide, that this is a unique number, a unique identifier for all the products to ensure from production to distribution to the retail. And without the barcode or without the number, it's very difficult for the e-marketplaces to operate. Of course, with the unique GT, the product ID, it helps not only the consumer but the brand in more precise marketing. And here I'm just giving examples that apart from the B2B side, the barcode actually gives a better consumer experience in terms of how you can find the product in the marketplaces, how you can better search, and how the brands better enable the consumers' engagement. For the if you go to any of these apps, these are the major apps of the marketplaces. You go to the Hong Kong TV Mall, you go to the Taobao app, etc. Normally, you will see the camera. You see the scan the barcode. Once you see it, if you scan the product, of course you can search, type the description. But if you like a particular product and you would like to see whether the product is sold on this marketplace, you can scan, and then you will find in this marketplace, and then you can directly buy. So this is another way to identify the product, to have a better quick search experience to the consumer. Secondly, GS1 also works with W3C, and Google is a keen supporter for it, to come up with a standard called the Smart Search. It is a structured or the schema for the searching mechanism, the searching engine at the end of a website. And apart from the standard structure to build this website in order to raise your ranking, the number itself, the GT number or the barcode number, is a structure that enables a better ranking of your product. It's very difficult for me to, because of the time, I can't go into the details of how the Smart Search is working or how to scan the barcode. Otherwise, it would take some more time. But this is just to give you a flavor that barcode is not just for the physical retail or for the marketplaces. As a consumer, it happens around us. And another local example is that we follow China, because WeChat is a very popular tool for consumers to do a lot of things. So after China, Hong Kong is the second one that we connect our database with WeChat. So when you use the WeChat scan the barcode, it no need to be the 2D. It can be you scan the 1D barcode. It will go back to our database, the Hong Kong database, and that is a tool to promote the product, because then whatever information you put up in our registry, in our database, the consumer will be able to see it. So this is a way to promote your product to the WeChat users, which we believe would help users, especially the SME, to outreach to a huge consumer base in China, of course, and in Hong Kong. More people are using WeChat as well. So you may ask, you say, oh, okay, that's only for the retail. But in fact, this barcode this is cross-industry. And here I'll just give you another example of how it is being used in healthcare. Many of you may have come across the issues that in the healthcare, very often, in fact, just 2 days ago or 3 days ago, I read from the newspaper, there are several serious incidents, and some of the equipment, okay, or the string being left in the patient's body after the operation, and the patient needs to have another operation in order to take out all this. So this is not just this is quite often happen around the world, and this is why, and also because we have a lot of the implants embedded in the body, like the bone joint and things like this. So a few years ago, the U.S. FDA, the Food and Drugs Administration, worked with GS1, and they would like to regulate the medical device. And before doing that, they need to have an identification system to uniquely identify each of the medical device. So I don't go into it. They have 3 levels to identify the medical device. The most common one would be even, a piece of cotton. But the most sophisticated one would be those implants, the what you call that, the heart, that you put into your heart, those stuff. So they need to identify, and then they build a registry. So GS1 is one of the issuing agency, and to uniquely identify and populate the information to the FDA. And then we hold the responsibility to ensure, for example, in Hong Kong, we have to ask all our members whether their products are being shipped or exported to US under the FDA regulation. And if so, they must declare clear information in our database, which we will publicize in the UDI, in the US UDI database. Similar thing also happened in the EU on having this UMDO identification. Going back to more recent, last night, GS1 Global host a vaccine traceability webinar with WHO, with World Bank, etc. And precisely talking about the application of the GS1 standard across the vaccine supply chain. And without going through the details, and of course in Hong Kong, we are also working hard to see how we can use the identification, GS1 standard on the 3 vaccines supplied to Hong Kong. Now, this is an example. If you look into the standard, globally, we recommend the GTIN is the product identification. And then we have, I use this one. The GTIN is, if this is a product, actually AstraZeneca, which is one of the supply to Hong Kong, they already practice this in the source. Now, of course, they're now facing some challenges. So on each of their pack, they will have the GTIN, and then they have the lot number, they have the expiry date. These are the basic information embedded in the GS1 data matrix barcode, so that each stakeholder in the supply chain will be able to use the information to try and trace whether it's from the production, out of the production, to the logistics, to the distribution, until the vaccination process in different healthcare centers. Interesting enough, it is not more than consumer goods or healthcare, even on the construction as well. Globally, we have a collaboration with another global organization called the Building Smart. And Hong Kong, we also signed the local MOU. But this is, I'm just using an example of how it's being used to identify each different component for whether it's a piece of steel, whether it's a fabricator component, in the entire production, transportation, as well as the construction. This is just another example of the application for different industries. Now, of course, in Hong Kong, a few years ago, the government has been advocating on the BIM model to have a structure for the construction in order to ensure safety. And under the BIM model, the GS1 identification is part of it. This is another example from the customs and logistics. In China, so right now, actually it's back in 2019, the China customs, for products imported into China, you have to declare the product information. In the past, you have to declare what we call the HS code, harmonized code, which is defined by the WCO. However, China customs say that now we need more granular information up to the identification level, because the WCO HS code is more of a classification. they do want to have analysis, more sort of granular identification. So they put the field G10 in the trade declaration into the China custom system. And then they link to the GS1 China database, which is then connected to other database, including Hong Kong. So our product registry is connected to China, and then they build a link to China customs so that when they can, before the product ships in, when they have the G10, they will know what this number is about to enable them to do more data analysis, or perhaps also like the US, do some kind of risk analysis. Now, is that all for just the number, the barcode, etc.? No. You will see that this is also what we call the link, because very often, a lot of the info, although in Hong Kong and in many other of the GS1 chapters, we have a local registry, the linked global. The registry will have the G10 and all the different attributes relating to the product. However, the information could be related or linked to different databases. Here, we have the standard called the digital link. Basically, this is to define the standards of the URL. In the past, when you see the QR code, usually the QR code will have the URL. But now, as a brand, you can put the different information. We have different what we call the link type. As this example, the link type could be a recipe, the link type could be for retail point of sale. So as a brand, you can define the link type according to the standard in your URL, and then different applications will just extract the relevant link type for use. Further on that, many people will say, okay, well, the barcode can easily be copied. What should I do? Now, this has been, I think this is more from a Hong Kong local perspective. We are pleased that we have find partner who have a microprinting technology, which has a global patent so far. So we put this microprinting technology, this encryption, on top of whether it's a 1D barcode or 2D barcode, it doesn't really matter. So, and then we have the app called the real barcode. The consumer or anyone could scan the use a real barcode to scan and tell you whether this is genuine or not. Now, on top of the app, recently there's also what we call the web authentication. That is, you go to the web and then you can take the picture and then send it back, and then it will respond back whether this barcode is genuine or not. Now, this is important because if most of the applications right now is put a label with this real barcode, and this label, once you tear it, you can't tear it, otherwise you'll be seen. So unless you change, you can't change the package per se. So this is a way of protecting the brand, but at the same time, you can make use of it for consumer engagement. Like for example, for the electronics, where you have the warranty, you can scan it and then ask the consumer to register the warranty. Similarly, scan the barcode and then we link to an IoT visibility platform so that we know, as an example, where the bean is coming from Canada, the bean, and then where it goes through and whether it has a coating protection, etc., etc. Let's talk a little bit here. You will reflect that, the barcode is not just the barcode that many people think it is. It is actually a digital link to today's internet world. Now, as further to that is Internet of Things. Many people have heard of the Internet of Things. In fact, this is a word coined by MIT and GS1 back in 1999. At that time, the internet has been opened up for commercial use. So MIT has approached GS1 to say, oh, how can we work together, making use of the internet, the RFID technology, as well as a unique key to come up with this Internet of Things. That is, traditionally, all the information is written into the RFID tag. But the vision is to make the tag very affordable. It only contains a key, a unique key in the RFID tag, And then all the information will be in the internet and to get this information. So this is a bit of the background and how we coined the word Internet of Things. And of course, it evolved due to the time. I won't go into the details of its history, but we were the first, in the world that we bring back this, and then we encourage the government, and we come up with this visibility platform based on the EPCIS standard called the Easy Track. And that's a platform to provide the end-to-end supply chain visibility. So this is just to give you a feeling of how the Internet protocol, how the EPC standard model on the Internet protocol, like the object naming services like the DNS, and then the EPC code, which is a serialized 96-bit code, which is a model on the IP address, and the EPCIS is just the HTTP, etc., etc. To sum up on this EPCIS, basically it helps to track an item in whatever format to give you the information of what, where, when, why, and that is what the product is, where it has been going, at when, and then what is it, what's the business use of it. I think I'm going a bit too fast. I'm not too sure, so these are some of the examples. For example, we work with the APAC to facilitate end-to-end supply chain visibility across different regions. For example, track the Malaysia durian from Malaysia to Hong Kong to China, the Peru asparagus to US, etc., using our EPCIS network Easy Track. This is just a feeling that you can see from the product, with the logistics item, and then the different logistics, and then all the information captured to provide the end-to-end visibility all the way from Malaysia to Hong Kong. And then because Malaysia also have their network, China also have the network, we're all based on the same standard, and then we connect each other. Right now, we are also working on the e-port project, connecting, although it's, we're trying to get the Hong Kong port, the Shanghai port, and then the Australia port connected with the EPCIS as well. On top of the logistics and the customs, we're also creating an ecosystem of with the different sensors, connecting to different sensors into the Easy Track in order to support smart operations. So this is just one of the examples that we have been working with our member in their factory, where there are different sensors. Of course, apart from the sensor, is also the video analytics, and then consolidate and build the insight from our Easy Track. Some examples of the dashboard, real-time monitoring. Of course, we need to work closely with the member to define the use case, what to capture, where to capture, for what purposes, etc. In addition to the smart operation, this is also smart retail, and you can see that this is to, of course, it utilizes different applications, video analytics, machine learning, but each of the product is tagged with our RFID tag, so that we'll be able to connect to analyze the consumer behavior when picking the product. And this can be in different format and form a network of information in order to analyze the touch points, so that whether the consumers go into different locations, the preference, the behavior, etc. So this is some of the examples of the smart retail solutions that we are working on with our members. So in conclusion, we have been riding on 4 major platforms that GS1 Hong Kong has built on the global standard: the master product information. I didn't talk about this today. This is more on the transactional data called the Easy Trade. But today, all the B2B, whether we're talking of whatever retail chain, the hospitals, the food services, and all the suppliers are now transacting their business on this Easy Trade platform. And then this is the Easy Track to capture the visibility data, where we can do the different data analysis that get the information from these different platforms. So this is just to give you a snapshot. Hopefully you will understand that what you have seen, the barcode is much beyond a barcode on a physical package. It's actually a digital passport to today's digital world. And a lot of the data intelligence can be derived from it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Anna. I heard your presentation. You gave a really thorough introduction of the applicability of data science. Actually, it's related to I can heard is that it's related to business, related to healthcare sector, related to construction, international trade, and even retail. It's about the marketing approach. Okay, so thank you very much, Anna. Thank you for your thorough introduction of GS1 work, and also how is applicability and also applicable of the applicability of the data science into the global and also supply chain management. Thank you very much, Anna.
Thank you. So, I actually look forward to other speakers as well as your students of this course to make some insight out of what we are talking about.
Yes, I'm also very looking forward to it. Thank you very much. Okay, regarding the application of data science, actually we have also invited Dr. Bertoli. Okay, so he is the expertise in environmental science, and he will give his presentation regarding the intersection of science, intersection of the policy, and how to apply the data to do the policy and then also the research. Okay, I will pass the time to you, Bertol. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the very kind introduction, and good evening, everyone. My name is Berto. I'm a program manager with Civic Exchange. I will be talking a bit about what it means to work for a think tank. So the title of my talk will be Working for a Think Tank at the Intersection of Data, Science, and Policy. So first of all, what are think tanks? Principally, they are institutions or organizations that engage in research in order to help shape public policy. So the main tasks for think tanks are to research on specific topics, analyze issues which have policy relevance, and then to engage stakeholders. That can be in the form of providing advice and information, can also be stronger in the sense of advocating for certain changes. So think tanks are very often involved in a very wide range of topical areas that can span social issues, as well as economics, healthcare, or technology. So very often they're at the front of sparking new ideas or research that pushes into new directions. To give you just two examples of some very prominent think tanks that you may have heard of, Chatham House is a UK think tank that focuses on 5 main topical areas. The Fraser Institute is a Canadian think tank that has a similarly wide range of areas in which they actively undertake research. With their work, think tanks aim to have an impact on public opinion and in shaping public policy. So primary goals of think tanks are to provide information to policymakers, to the public, and of course to stakeholders like corporations or business owners, which in turn allows policymakers and decision makers in general to make decisions that are based on evidence and knowledge. You could think of think tanks also as a bridge between different actors of society, those who do technical research, they're often in academia, and then those who make decisions, that is the governance part, and those who are affected by decisions, which is often economic actors and of course members of the civil society, so each and every one of us. Because of that, it is vital that think tanks are able to translate primary academic and technical research, whether that's done in-house by collaborators or by third parties, into a language that is more easily understood by a wide audience. How do think tanks do that? They use direct contact with policy leaders, businesses, organizations, enterprises like social enterprises to discuss issues and to gauge views and opinions. The primary output from think tanks are typically research publications and research reports. They're often supplemented by events that enable more direct personal interaction like seminars, workshops, or conferences, as well as, of course, engagement with media to ensure that we have a very wide dissemination of results. A few words about Civic Exchange. Civic Exchange is a local public policy think tank. It's been around for more than 20 years. The guiding principle of our work is to contribute to shaping a livable and sustainable Hong Kong. And our work covers four main areas, basically. The economy, the environment, social issues, and governance. And quite in the spirit of a very typical think tank, we do that by advancing civic education on these issues, engaging different members of society, the economy, and political leaders, and then, of course, by helping to shape public policy. So the mainstays of our work, very similar to what I mentioned earlier, is in-depth research, dialogue, development of practical concepts and solutions. Now, to give you a little more concrete of an idea of what our work comprises of, I want to go through a very brief selection of some of our reports and publications throughout the past few years. We have conducted, for example, work on air quality issues that include personal exposure, indoor air quality, shipping emissions with the Fair Winds Charter. I might talk about that a little more later on. We looked into biodiversity and the role of ecosystems. For example, what are the general public's attitudes towards biodiversity and conservation. We have extensively studied walkability and public open spaces. Work on water security looked into Hong Kong's water management and how there is need to rethink water conservation, water pricing, and also alternative sources of water. We led comparative studies into urban well-being, which included extensive surveys in different Asian cities, including Hong Kong. We're active in studying waste issues, especially when it comes to plastic waste. We are part of a larger initiative called Drink Without Waste, for example. And we have, of course, also worked on sustainable transport and mobility. And in fact, the study that is shown here on the left-hand side is one of Civic Exchange's very first transport studies from almost 2 decades ago. And some of the recommendations that we made back then still ring true today, actually. In the past 2 years, Civic Exchange has focused mainly on research that relates to climate change and reducing our city's carbon footprint. So we published a base study mid last year. Now we're in the process of conducting focus studies into different aspects of carbon emissions that includes buildings, energy, the mobility sector, waste, and some of these are extensions of work that we have done earlier. On climate change issues, just as a note, you may see this logo at the right top corner quite often, Hong Kong 2050s now. A lot of our climate change related work is being conducted under this platform. I think we call it a platform, in case you might have seen that elsewhere. Typically, there's a process in how we're trying to achieve an impact. The first stage is to look at what specific issues there are, what policy implications are involved. Is there a policy gap? Are there outdated or inappropriate policies in place, for example? We then take that to the next step, conducting research to shed light on the details of the issue. That helps us in structuralizing the debate to formulate more clearly what changes or initiatives are actually needed. With that, we then go to engage stakeholders across the society, the economy, and political leaders to try to see what kind of solutions can be developed. This is a very important step because in the end, we want solutions that can be carried by a wide consensus. Together, this forms the basis of driving change. Change can be driven in different ways in the sense of that we try to push for adequate policies. At the same time, changing public mindsets and behaviors can also be very, very important. I want to try to illustrate this process with a concrete example. Managing vibrant streets is one of our public open space research projects. It addresses the failures of proper street management, which has led to, for example, the closure of the Mong Kok pedestrian zone. It has led to conflicts in other districts as well. This work gained quite extensive and sustained media coverage. It sparked public discussion on walkability and street management. So at the very beginning, we do our background research to identify what are the actual issues at hand. We look into what are the roles and functions of streets in Hong Kong. You can see here, for example, 6 main categories. We then have to scour for sources of data and information on street management and street activities. That can include laws and regulations. We went out to conduct surveys and interviews, scoured through media reports and government reports to see what are issues and what are recent events that may have an influence on these things. We then end up with a relatively complex web of information, and that we need to try to break down to the source of conflicts. What are the core issues at hand that need to be addressed? So that is part of reframing the debate. That means we need to get a clearer picture of what are really the fundamental issues, not details, but a few points that can be addressed. In this case, the main, I guess, issue for street management is siloed thinking among government departments and bureaus. There are many bureaus and departments that are involved. They all have their own realm of responsibility, which they don't want to leave. So in the end, they don't work together. They don't communicate among each other. It leads to a lot of misplaced policy priorities. There are also certain regulations that are simply outdated, that cannot really capture things that are more relevant today. And that in turn leads to very inefficient and very cumbersome enforcement procedures. That's part of reframing the debate. And with those points, we then go and identify who are the stakeholders, who are the people who are affected by street management, who are involved in managing streets. That can be personnel from government departments who need to enforce certain rules, people who do activities on the street. It can be street performers. It can be people who engage in commercial activities on streets, shop owners or restaurant owners who often actually extend their spaces into streets. So we have to design and convene meetings, know more about their concerns, their interests, identify if there are mutual interests, if there are areas of disagreement. This is a very dynamic process, typically, of deliberation and debate. In the end, this will all help us to come up with policy recommendations that try to transform this conflict into an opportunity for improvement, which can be beneficial to everyone. Then the last stage, as I said, is driving change. Of course, the primary output, as I said, is typically a research report that is publicly available. Everyone can read it, everyone can see it. But we need to do a little more than that. Part of the public dissemination, part, as I said, from the report is media presence. So we go into radio or TV features. We write opinion pieces in printed press. On the policy side, of course, we are going to talk to relevant people in different government bureaus or departments. We might talk to members of LegCo. And of course, we also make regular submissions to the government, for example, to legislative council panels, or if there are public consultations that are on relevant topics, to lend voice to our research results. Finally, we also go further into more detailed aspects by initiating follow-up studies, for example. This one is an ongoing study that addresses how street performance could be more effectively managed in Hong Kong. Another example of a so-called science to policy journey is on controlling shipping emissions of ocean-going vessels in Hong Kong. And I picked this example because it's quite different from the street management work. This one was a very, very long and non-linear process that took 10 years. As you can see, it was more of an iterative process with many, many different rounds of research, engagement, intermediate changes that were achieved before we really ended up with legislation that was enacted. And that piece of legislation in the end mandated cleaner fuel to be used in Hong Kong waters and substantially contributed to cleaning up Hong Kong's air. In the course of those 10 years, Civic Exchange had very different roles. So we were involved in scientific research. We were sharing best practices on emission controls. Of course, we tried to bring together different stakeholders, trying to build partnerships. And in the end, I think that's the key. You facilitate the dialogue between the two main actors, which is the shipping industry, which has certain interests, and the government. to come up with a solution that is acceptable to everyone. Now I want to spend the remaining time to talk a little more about the role of data, not very much in detail because our work is just is too diverse. But data is very central to a think tank's work. If I may come back to the goals of a think tank, using data is what enables us to ensure that policy and decision making is based on evidence and knowledge. And we do make use of a very wide range of data to make technical and academic research more widely accessible and available in the context of policy relevant areas. So for our work, when we are talking about data, we first need to understand what kind of data do we need for a certain issue, what is useful in discussing it. You need to find sources of data, extract them. In the engagement process, it becomes very important that we contextualize data and to present them in ways which are easily comprehensible and especially comprehensible by different actors. Data, I would say, drives debate. It is often the basis to make strong and convincing arguments. So what kind of data do we deal with? We deal with quantitative and qualitative data. Primary data we often obtain through conducting surveys, interviews, or organizing focus groups. Numerical data, most of the time, is secondary in nature. We get it through databases, open databases, but also data that we get through interaction with stakeholders. It depends. Of course, there are various reports and publications, the government, LegCo, technical and scientific reports by other organizations. And very, very often, of course, we go back to looking into academic publications. Typically, data we get is not in a form that is immediately usable to us. So we do various types of data analyses. They are, it depends, like some are very superficial, some go very deep into details. It very much depends on the nature of the project. So we might do simple statistical analysis. We might look into time series, conduct economic analysis, like cost-benefit analysis. We have done geospatial analyses, and we've also employed scientific models, for example, air quality models. Since dissemination and engagement are key parts of our work, that means that data presentation and data visualization is also quite important to us. Different media require different ways to present data. So if you're making a social media post, for example, that needs to be very concise. You are not going to put in a lot of details, just a simple message. On the other hand, if you do a technical seminar, you can go into the very depth of details, basically. And audience specific, that is very much related to medium specific too. I just want to say, like, if you talk to political and business leaders, for example, they're very often generalists, which means they know the issue, but they may not know the details. On the other hand, if you talk to very specific people in government departments, they are often technical, they are experts in their field, and the general public, in the end, they are often laymen, they know very little, have very little prior knowledge, or maybe sometimes they haven't heard of the issue at all before. So depending on who you're confronting with your data, you need to use very different ways of presenting that. I want to give a few examples of data-related tasks. You may need to consolidate and adapt data from external studies, like in this case, an academic publication that went into the Fairwinds Charter project, for example. Another thing, also based on the Fairwinds Charter, we developed an activity-based emission inventory for ships. One difficulty here was that there were a lot of activities which we didn't have any prior data for. So in the end, in the course of that work, actually Civic Exchange went around to talk to ship operators across the Pearl River Delta region to try to get some idea of what certain port activities or shipping activities, what kind of emissions they will cause. Now, in the end, coupled with some GPS tracking data that enabled us to look at a spatial distribution of ship-related SO2 emissions. That's what you see here. We used a similar type of geospatial analysis to map the distribution and accessibility of public open spaces in Hong Kong. It's another example of geospatial data analysis. Statistical modeling, the energy policy simulator is a modeling tool that builds more on statistical analysis. We use that in our climate change work. It enables us to look into effects of various policies on greenhouse gas emissions and also certain related co-effects like healthcare benefits or impacts on air quality, for example. Just one note here, this model is freely available on the web. So if you want to play around with it, please feel free and take a look what you can find. Finally, on data presentation and visualization, as I said, it's important. This can range from very simple statistical representations, like what you see on the top right, the number of electric private cars in Hong Kong, or the fraction among total licensed private cars, to more complex models like isochrones. That's what you see at the bottom. Isochrones are, again, a geospatial concept that depicts more or less how easily accessible a place is, for example, a subway station. You can think of isochrones as something like a catchment area. So you may have noticed this is not one of our graphs. We're just starting to look into this. So there's nothing I can present on this at this point. But basically, isochrones is a very useful concept in discussing how good mobility access is, where are problems, how can it be improved, and what would certain measures, what kind of impact would they have. Lastly, this is my very last slide. If you would like to work for a think tank, are there any particular skills you should have? Well, I'd say they're quite general, since we work on a very wide range of topics. So generally, you should have a very keen interest in public policy, current affairs, or issues that the think tank is working on. Teamwork is crucial, not just within the company, but especially since we very often collaborate with other partners, with institutions and universities. In turn, that also means you need to be a good communicator, not just within the think tank, but especially when it comes to engagement outside. It's both from the perspective of interpersonal skills, as well as being able to communicate ideas and concepts or data clearly. It's helpful to have some familiarity with different research methods, qualitatively and quantitatively, since we work quite extensively with them. And if you're interested in working more on the research side, of course, being knowledgeable in specific subject areas can be useful. Last but not least, public policy has a lot of dimensions. In most cases, there are further impacts in terms of politics. There are financial, economic, and social impacts. So having some understanding of these dimensions and how they play together will be quite helpful. Something like a bigger picture understanding. Maybe this is how we could call it. Lastly, there are different roles in a think tank. You can be on the project management side. You could lead research as a research associate, or helping to conduct research as a research assistant. Engagement is, of course, one of our core tasks, which includes talking to media, preparing briefing material, leading engagement events like workshops, panels, and roundtables. So if you're more interested in that side, you could be working as a communications officer or communications manager. And of course, if you want to get a taste of it first and see if this is something that you would like, you can always do an internship or be a student helper as well. And I think with that, I do hope I was able to give you an idea of the workings of the think tank. And if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Contact me anytime you want. And I think, yeah, with that, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much, Berto. Thank you very much for your presentation. Yeah, actually, so you have given a really comprehensive policy analysis or policy flow to do how to incorporate the data into a really good research report, and also how to persuade or disseminate the research findings to maybe to the government, or to have some policy recommendation. You know, this is very good to give our students to have a really comprehensive and also general pictures of how exactly the data can be incorporated into a research or the policy recommendation to be submitted to maybe the government, or to let more public know about the approach or the advocacy of your think tank. Really thanks, Berto. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And may I introduce the third speaker? And he's already here. Yeah, Jervis, thank you very much. And yeah, please take your time, and thanks for your presentation. Okay, and so you may start now. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Before I start, I just want to check on time because I know my session is till like 45. If we want to leave more time on Q&A, then I can shorten mine.
I think that you can stick to the 20 minutes. That will be fine. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, thank you very much, Matthew. Thank you very much.
Cool. So hi everyone. Thanks Anna and Berto. I've learned a lot. I love the ID everything because clean data is most important, crucial to my work. That's why when I heard Anna give a presentation on ID, I'm so excited. And Berto, I think we share a lot of in commons of our frustration towards data, and especially visualization and explaining to layman what is the best way to communicate the complexity behind it. I really envy your work because I think making data literacy to general public is not easy. So thanks for this presentation. So a short introduction of myself. I'm a senior data scientist in BCG Gamma. I also a fellow of Actuaries of Australia since 2013. And for BCG Gamma, we are basically the data analytics arm or data science arm of the Boston Consulting Group. We hire more than 950 world-class analytic practitioners. That makes us the fourth biggest employer of data scientists in the world, as claimed by the company. Well, so what we do is basically we have a lot of digital product to build, deploy, and monitor end-to-end AI solution for our client. So before I start, I want to introduce what is data science. So it's a hype word. Everyone wants to be a data scientist right now. It's the most sexiest job in the 21st century. But there's some common understanding I want to align with everyone before we drill down into what is a data scientist. So the first slide we talk about what does we mean by AI. So there's a spectrum of artificial intelligence. So you start from the left-hand side, the bottom end is simply a process orchestration. So think about you have 5 tasks. You need to do it in order. And then basically you just have a pipeline to do it one by one and make sure all the 5 tasks is executed properly and in the order that you want. So that is the low end. It's still an automation, but it's just a process of orchestration. Think about the same task, you have to do it 50 times every day. Now it becomes a mundane job and no one wants to do it. You probably want to bring in some smart to repeatedly doing it. So that would be a RPA, or what we call robotic process automation. Once you have a defined process and rule-based decision, you can ask a robot to do it for you. This is highly repetitive task and it saves a lot of time. So one key use case might be in call center, when someone called the call center, they need to pick up the phone, they need to get all the information regarding the callers or the customer. They might need to navigate through tens of different systems to get the relevant information. So one good use case are basically you enter a member ID and then all the information pops up. So instead of I manually open tens of different applications, I can have one go and get all the information I need. So that is the middle spectrum. You have some smart, you have a robot to help you to do stuff. So on the right-hand side, the spectrum comes into, we do some cognitive task. So it requires some judgment. It is not just rule-based. Something maybe like a playing chess or AlphaGo playing Go, or some decision engine would fall into this bucket. And this is getting more and more important because it brings business value when machine learns faster than human. So we explain what is artificial intelligence, and one of the key blocks in building artificial intelligence in machine learning. So what is machine learning? So machine learning is basically a family of algorithms that learn and make prediction from data. So historically, when statisticians or actuaries, we try to build model, we use a GLM or we use a certain algorithm and we feed our model one by one. So we pick the features, we fit it in and see whether it works or not. We take it out and then we try another one. So it really depends on the knowledge and the know-how of the modeler. but this is not scalable. And also, it does not uncover some hidden correlation between the data because it relies on human know-how. So what machine learning is trying to do is, under the assumption that as long as I throw enough data to a machine, it can unearth the correlation or the causation that human does not understand. So there is a learning algorithm there. It is like when you feed in more data, it will become better or like high accuracy. It is data driven and it unearths useful features for you. So we don't make any pre-assumption. We just keep throwing data at a machine and trying to interpret whatever it predicts. So instead of having modeler actively picking features through the data, we throw data at a machine and let the machine tell me what features are important. That is machine learning. So we touch on artificial intelligence, we touch on machine learning. Now we go into data science. So like, if you work in data, if you are good with meme, you always pick some meme from the internet. So that is like the typical memes, like what people think I do, what I do. So what I really do is basically just going through Stack Overflow and trying to see why my code doesn't work. So before joining BCG, I thought working as a data scientist is basically going through the cycle of how to develop a model. So you have your data, you generate some features or input variables, you put it into a model, you try to enhance the performance, and also you need to present to client and try to drive some impact. So I was naive and simple. After getting into BCG, before being a data scientist, I'm a consultant. So in consulting world, you just don't provide an algorithm. You need to provide an end-to-end solution that solves your client's business problem. So first of all, you need to understand what is their business problem in the context of their strategy. So what are they trying to do? Are they trying to drive engagement? Are they trying to drive market share? Are they trying to drive brand awareness? You need to understand what their strategy and where they're trying to do. After that, you would design an end-to-end solution with that strategy in mind. When you design the solution, you need to implement your solution. It is crucial you understand how they run their business. In that case, you need to understand what the process of them doing their business and what are the key bottlenecks you're trying to solve. After you understand the business process, you drill down into the IT support. So all of these days, we don't work by hand, right? Like we use calculator, we use Excel spreadsheet, we use Google Drive, we use everything digital. But IT is a key backbone of everything right now. So you have your data generated, you have your data integration, but everything you have to go through IT. So IT means your cell phone, means your laptop, means everything. So you want to change something in a business sense, you need to have a corresponding integration in the IT system. So after doing all this, you still need to explain what it means to the client. And through slide writing, you create like a presentation like that and try to educate your client what data analytics means and what is the implication to their business. Normally, driving a data analytics cases or a project require a lot of different people. As I mentioned, you would have your business user, you would have your IT support, you might have your front-end users who is trying to use your tool. In order to drive that many people, such a big team, it requires senior level engagement. So basically, if you don't get the boss to agree to what you're doing, it's really difficult to get that many people to work on the same project with the same goal. Simply because each department have their own KPI, they have their own goal, they have their own agenda. This project might not solve their pain point, but it might be solving the company's pain point. In that case, you need senior level engagement to tell them this project is important and get everyone aligned about their KPI within this project. So it is not just building algo, cleansing the data, and then make some slide. It is everything on the right. You need to understand the business. You need to understand what IT to support it. You need to engage with senior or like basically all the spectrum within the customer or your client side to drive impact. So nowadays, when I was doing job hunting before, I see a lot of job description about data scientists. Trust me, it is a wish list. Real data scientists don't know everything. So my understanding is like data science is a science. So it requires you to have a hypothesis and you're trying to use data to prove it. And keep in mind that your failure to prove a hypothesis is still a key learning. I think Berto agrees with me on that. It's like you find out something that is not working is still really important. And through this learning, be ready and flexible to iterate because you won't find your hypothesis like the right answer in the first go. You just go with your direction, go with your instinct, trust your math, do it rigorously, and then fine tune your hypothesis and get closer to what you're trying to solve. One important thing I learned during my career is data scientist is not just a person. You cover a wide range of different aspects within the company. You have your business know-how, you have your IT, you have your algo, you have your coding. Data science is more like a team. You have a good team with people covering the key aspect, then you're good to go. Don't be too stressful if you see that you're missing one or two elements. It is fine because no one knows everything. So what it takes to be a good data scientist in consulting. This is our very famous 10-20-70 rules. So before joining BCG, I thought like, well, data scientists need to build good algo, make a really good prediction, like 90% AUC. It doesn't mean anything if you don't have the supporting technology. Think about it. You have a perfect prediction of what your customer will buy tomorrow. But if you don't have a technology to contact them and try to reach out to them and convince them to buy the product, it doesn't make any sense. So once you have a good algo, you have the corresponding technology to reach out to the end user. Okay, that comes to 20%. What if the end user, with your 100% accuracy prediction, get your result through a supporting technology, but simply don't use them? It still doesn't drive any business impact. So the key thing comes from the business user adapting to the way technology and data to support their daily operation. A project I was in is basically building a prediction of like who is likely to have a mortgage with a different bank. So the relationship manager can reach out to the customer and trying to get that customer to bank with you. We build an algo, it seems fine. 2 years later, we reach out to the customer. So how's it going? And they say they never used it. Simply because in a bank, you need to let the model sit for 3 years and make sure it is stable enough before you can do anything with the model. To us, that's frustrating, right? You spend 4 months building a model, you test it out, you pull your heart out, do a lot of data cleansing, a lot of sleepless night, and then it sit there for 2 years, no one using it. So remember it, like you can have a perfect algo, it's not everything. You need a supporting technology and you need your business user to use it. And you need your business user to understand why it is important to use it. So 10-20-70, before data scientist, in consulting, you are a consultant. You need to solve the business question. You need to engage the user to use your technology. So what makes me sad? Again, like as a data scientist, you always deal with cats memes and cats pictures. So here's one for you guys. So normally, like we have a data scientist role, but majority of our time is chasing up data. Because when you go into a client, normally they don't have all the data you need. Their data is siloed in different departments, hosted by different platform, owned by different user. So in order to build a single data platform that means anything, it probably takes 2 to 3 months already. So data silo is basically you need to aggregate all the data in a single platform. And then you realize that the data quality is so bad that you want to cry. So once I work on a project, there is a gender field. So normally I was expecting you might have a male, female, unknown, or not available, 4 values. I saw 37 different values with different spelling, uppercase, lowercase. So it's just like one single field that you think is really easy, takes forever to clean. So remember, like data silos, you need to have every data on a single platform. You have the data integrity issue. Second thing, be friends with IT. They are your best friends. If they don't give you access to a database, you can't do anything. If they don't set up an environment for you, you can't do anything. Even after you build your data algo model, your output, if they don't help you to ship it to the business user, you can't do anything. So be friends with IT. Technology support is really important in data analytics world. Final one, you hear me keep on mentioning business user. If they don't adapt it, if they don't trust your model, if they don't trust the way of working that you are introducing, it doesn't mean anything. So for example, you can have a half-year engagement with them, build an amazing model, set up the infrastructure, but they stop using once you're gone. Then you have a continuity issue, and then the client is basically pay you like whatever money, but for 6 months of uplift, and then after you're gone, everything back to ground zero, it doesn't mean anything to the client. So data, technology, and business user are the 3 key things that you have to bear in mind when you work in consulting. So some useful courses if you want to go down this path. As I mentioned, before joining BCG or before going to the startup, when I was still an actuary, I know nothing about IT. And when you get into data analytics, it's really hard. You need to communicate with IT, you need to talk to engineer. A good place to get you started is the Coursera course on Google IT Professional Certificates. Have a look, it might help you. If you want to start coding, there's a course on how to think like a computer scientist. It's a book. It's a really good book, really easy to read, and it's free. If you want to go deeper and have an understanding of what is machine learning, what is like neural network, there's a deep learning specialization on Coursera that might help you. So here's the end of my presentation. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the Q&A.